Welcome to What Lies Ahead. I'm your host, Chris Raffini, lead singer of the Long Island band Overthrow. On my podcast, I explore everything related to the hardcore scene through the eyes of artists, promoters, and record labels. As always, please like or subscribe on all social media platforms. For more information and updates, check out our Instagram page at @WhatLiesAhead_podcast and find us on Facebook by searching What Lies Ahead. Now, on to the show. Today's guest is Fred, best known as the lead singer of Bad Trip, and now stepping into a new chapter with his solo project, Slowrole, which dropped its debut EP a couple of months ago. We're going to talk about Fred's musical history, the evolution from Bad Trip into this new sound, the creative process behind Slowrole, and what to expect in the future from this project. Fred, thanks for coming on. What's going on?
Chris, thanks so much for having me. I'm so
Yeah,
psyched
it's
to be
awesome. And we
back
were
in the
like,
fold.
yeah, appreciate you coming on. We were talking about this. So when what was it? Give or take, it was like 1987 Bad Trip started, right? Or give or
Yep.
take. And then around 1995, you guys called it quits, right when my band started. So we never had an opportunity to play with you guys, but I do remember just loved looking at flyers back in the day and just seeing Bad Trip on like Wetlands flyers and Long Island flyers, like everything, and playing with just everybody who was everybody. So it's kind of cool that I get to connect with you with this, but really get to also talk about your new project, which is really, really good, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I mean it's been such a great journey, and from just not knowing what we were doing as kids, trying to start a hardcore punk band, not giving a shit, and then realizing the same exact thing happened for me later with Slow Roll, was just not giving a shit, and then just figuring it out. And it certainly comes full circle, but having that punk ethos of like, I'm just doing this is so important, not only for music but for everything in our lives. I think being drawn to that ethos is generalizable to so much of our life.
hmm And the new Slow Roll, I was telling, the new EP really, really is good. It's
Thank you.
really, really good. We're going to get into it, but everything starts, you have a beginning story, right? So why don't we talk about what first your recollection of pulling you into music, that slowly started building into you going to hardcore shows, and that led to like Bad Trip, forming.
Yeah. So, there was a few pivotal moments in my history that I think drew me to hardcore, which was when I was probably around 9 or 10. My sister was 9 years older, and I remember her having two records in particular. One was the Specials' first record, and the second was Clash, the Clash, and I think it was London Calling. But I remember sitting outside of a room listening to it, and while everyone else is listening to whatever it was, Journey or Aerosmith or whatever, I, I was drawn to it, and I would sit, and then I would wait for her to leave, and I would take those records and start to listen to them. And I was always a Who fan. I loved the Who, Henderson, classic rock. I was a classic rock kid for sure. I love the heavier stuff. My generation, the first time I heard that, I was like, "What is this?" The Stooges too. Even later, it was later though. But just having that was certainly the first influence. And then, like, as we went inside, we had some neighbors who listened to punk and would introduce to the Dead Kennedys pretty early, and it was a little much for me. I remember when I was like 11 or 12, and then I started to listen to it more and more. And we started to we had a crew because we were skaters. So once you're a skater, you just attract people who have a similar vibe, right? And so we just started skating. We were skating on Long Island. We were skating at the Brooklyn Bridge. And I was probably around 14, 15 at the time. And then everything changed when we had a few friends in my neighborhood in Douglaston, which was in Eastern Queens, where we just started going to my friend's basement and just started yelling. And none of us knew how to play instruments. He kind of knew how to play drums, and that was kind of it. And we just said, you know what? Let's just have some fun and play. And you know, I think as a kid, as you think about like your influences all and all this stuff, you can be inhibited to not want to make a fool of yourself. And I look back and I think just how wonderful it was to have that, as I said, that punk ethos, and just to say, okay, this is so cool. And I would read about CBs, I would read about the Ramones, and they're saying, we're going to do this. This is what we're going to do. And, then it's history from there.
Mhm. And then as you're building up, you're obviously going, do you remember your first show
You know, I,
and where
so,
it was?
it depends. Like, so yeah, I do remember like the first kind of big show. So the first show I missed was the Circle Jerks at the Ritz in 1985, and I wasn't able to go. But then like 2 weeks later, Husker Du played. It was the Flip Your Wig tour, um, and that was the first like Rock Hotel show that I went to where I was like, what is this? And it was a little different. It was like new wave still, it was the crossover, Husker Du, Flip Your Wig. It was kind of changed. But then I started going to the Rock Hotel shows at the
Mm.
Ritz, and you started to, see a big shift in, like, because then the Cro-Mags started playing. We started to see GBH. We started to see, Social Distortion, The Descendants, all of those bands were playing. And so I don't remember after Husker Du what the first show was. I also remember seeing really early on was Rest in Pieces and the Six and Violence at some place on like Jericho Turnpike in Long
Mm.
Island. And I remember that too being really pivotal for me. I think the most pivotal moment for me, though, from like being indoctrinated into the hardcore scene, was a friend and I, it had to be 1986. We're going to CBGB's, and it was the summer of 86 to see Government Issue. It was the first time I was going to CB's, and I go, and he's a little older than me, so he walks in, and Louise, Hilly's wife, is like, "You're not 16." I'm like, "No, no, I'm totally 16, man." She's like, "No, no, no." And so she stops me. She's like, "I want to call your mother. Give me your phone number."
Mm.
And I'm like, what? My friend's, 18 or 17. Come on, come on. So she's like, I'm calling your house. So she calls my house, and my sister picks up, and she's like, hey, this is CBGB's. We're calling for Fred. How old is Fred? And my sister's like 15. She goes, thank you, and just hangs up and goes, get out. And so I start walking, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm in the East Village, and
And
the
CB's in that area was a lot different back then, right?
it was a lot different back
Not
then.
like it is now. Hmm.
And one of the guys at the door was like, listen, there's this new record store called Some Records. It just opened up, and it's all hardcore. And so it's on 6th Street. Why don't you go there? And I spent 2 hours there. And, I remember getting the Abused 7-inch, and the Uniform Choice
Uh,
first record had just come out. And Dwayne was like, you get this record. These guys are going to be awesome. These guys are awesome. And so that was like such a pivotal moment for me. Like, if I think of like listening to the Specials in the Clash in my sister's room, that was probably equally as pivotal.
that's cool. So then from there, and it's just amazing, right? You can't get into CBGBs. It's amazing that's what they did back then, right? No ID, none of that stuff. Just they call your house, and then but you end up at a record store and
Yeah.
you end up buying stuff. So then was it just almost every weekend after that, and
You
just
know, not
finding more
not
and
right
more
away.
music?
We I would go in, and it was Brendan from Bad Trip and I really would head into matinees when we could. And we started to go to lots of shows on Long Island too, since we were an Eastern Queens band, Right Track In. And we just started, we weren't scenesters. Like, we weren't like people who would just hang out at CB's, but we would go, and we really appreciated the music. And
Mhm.
so we were a part of a growing scene, and then we just started to get to know people slowly
Yeah.
just by being at the shows. The guys from Gorilla Biscuits, we met them. We met tons of other bands at the time. We weren't a straight edge band, so there was definitely a straight edge crew, and if you weren't straight edge, you kind of weren't in that scene.
Mhm.
You could be connected, and we played plenty of shows, and they were all great. Everybody was awesome. All the straight edge guys were great, but it was a different vibe.
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
were in a straight edge band. But back then there was such a small scene overall that everybody hung out with everybody else, and it was really just a blast. So, but that, yeah, definitely, like, having that had that experience and then also being a skater, I was like, this is what I'm doing.
This is it. So you went to CB, that was what, 86, you said, when that
Yeah,
happened? So
yeah.
Bad Trip forms is about a year later, right? Now, is that something that was planned over time or just kind of happened with why
No,
you guys came together?
yeah, it was, we were the stereotypical, nobody knew how to play instruments, nobody knew how to do anything. We were
Mhm.
actually, in 86 we formed as the Douglaston Mosh Association.
Okay.
And so, but I was the drummer, um, and our friend Brendan was the bass player and singer, and his brother was a good guitarist. And then our friend Eric, who was a drummer, was like, "Dude, you can't play drums." Because Brendan didn't know how to play bass, his brother didn't know how to play guitar, so we just would go in the basement and just yell and scream and play
Right.
play 4/4 beats. And then it was really like Stone Soup, where our friend, who is a pretty good drummer, said, like, hey man, let me play. Fred, why don't you sing? Brendan, you continue to play bass. Brian, you play guitar. And then we slowly morphed. When you have a decent drummer, it changes a lot, because they could you can mess up a lot, and they keep this fluidity, right? And so
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
were able to put something down in a different way. And we actually had recorded some stuff for DMA, but then we became Bad Trip. And then we brought in one of our friends from, it was a friend of a friend, this guy Marco Ciego, who became our guitarist. um, and he knew how to play. And then we brought in another guitarist who knew how to play. So essentially we just started getting people who actually knew how to play their instruments, and hence Bad Trip was formed. But it was a fluid process that just came from hanging out. There was no intent to start a band. None of us were musicians, we just loved music. And I remember a friend saying at the time, who was a jazz musician, was he just didn't take us seriously at all. And then he was like, I would kind of make fun of you guys. And then I saw that you were actually doing stuff. You were going out playing shows, and I'm sitting there learning my craft, not playing anywhere, and you guys are running around, and I was jealous. And then I didn't know what it was, and then I just realized, oh, that's punk. Like, what you were doing was punk. That was it. And so, hence, and then it just kind of took off from there.
Right. And then you started playing. Like I said, there was a lot of shows from the wetlands, from everywhere. I mean, you guys played, obviously played the PWAC. I mean, playing with
Yeah.
anyone from like Jawbreaker to Judge, you guys were
Yeah.
playing with, which was awesome. So when you fell into the sound that you guys had at that time, you put out a bunch of releases, obviously a lot of stuff with Wreckage that you put out that you're well known for. You could stream it now as well. Was there an intentional sound that you guys were looking for as it built into the band?
Yeah, no, not at all. And so much so Bad Trip, one of the things we were was we'd hang out a lot, but then, I went off to college, Marcus went off to college. Like, we would go 4 months without playing, and then we'd get together and start to play. So over time it built in this sort of natural way where our sound would change, because it was so long between recordings of us not
Mm.
playing and writing music. So we didn't have any intentional sound. If you look at from our 7-inch to our last record, we changed a fair amount.
Yeah,
And
and you hear it.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, for our last record, people were like, "You should just
Progression's
change
a great thing.
that."
Like or
Yeah,
or or changing what you do. You can't do the same thing every single time, right?
I,
So
I'm good with it. I don't have, like, some people will say, "Oh, you should change your name. You should become a different band because this record Buzzy is so different than Fear and Loathing, which was so different than Positively Bad or Elevator." And we were saying we're not doing this for anybody else. We don't have to change our name. We're a band, and as our sound progresses, we're okay with that. Certainly, some of it followed some of the trends for sure. Part of it was what we were listening to, but part of it also was the shift from when Luke was in the band, who was more a bluesy, heavy,
Mm,
like Allman Brothers, more heavy Sabbath influence, to Artie, who really came in when Artie Shepherd came in. He really helped change the sound towards that buzzy sound for sure. So we kind of just went with the flow. We just enjoyed it, and we didn't take ourselves, well, that's not true, we did take ourselves too seriously, and that's when it got less fun. And then we've realized, okay, we can't take ourselves seriously, and that's when it got more fun.
you guys toured though. You played. I know I mentioned wetlands and local stuff, but I mean, you were playing out in Seattle, right? Like, where are there some places that you guys toured? Yeah.
Oh man, we were, so the one thing that we did was, when we had the opportunity to get on the road, we got on the road. So Mike Bullshit from Go, we had played with them at ABC No Rio, and he's like, "Hey, you guys want to tour with us this summer?" And like, it was just a yes. We didn't even think about it. We said, that would be awesome, man. Let's do this. We knew that we didn't have any backing, we didn't have any money, so we all just, I was delivering pizzas, everybody was working
Hmm.
to save money. And so we went on the road with Go, and we met so many amazing bands throughout. I mean, we played with the Offspring in Seattle, actually.
Crazy.
you know we played with Inside Out, who became Rage Against the Machine in California. Great bands throughout. So we when we had the opportunity to tour, we did it. And we really had the opportunity to tour when we signed with Rec Age, because Rec Age, if some of your listeners don't know, they were a U.S. and German label, and so they had an infrastructure to help with touring. And so we did our first European tour in 92. And it was actually, our record had just come out. Not many people knew us. But by the end of the tour, we started to gain some momentum. And then we went back in 94. And in Germany, it was amazing. I mean, we were selling out pretty big venues at the time. And then in
Great.
95, we went back again, and we played with really amazing bands in Europe too. So not only were we playing with amazing bands in New York, just that I'm just so grateful to play with, whether it was Sheer Terror, or Leeway, or Underdog, or Jawbreaker. But we just played with like random bands in Europe, like the Lemonheads and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
cool. Yeah.
like, you know, these amazing experiences, like sleeping in squats one night, then sleeping in a youth center or Jugendcenter the next night, and then a hotel the next night, because we sold out a show with 800 people. So it was like one of those things where we tasted the good life and then played to like two drunk guys in Amsterdam. And you know uh, about that time, and as I, I wish at the time I could go back and love every second. And I don't know how much you toured, Chris, but like, when things got a little, we walked into one squat and they were just sitting there, and we just walked in, there was just some dogs in our room, and there's just dog shit all over the beds, and we're like, fuck, it's all
Yeah.
these crusty punks. And then also just realizing we all slept in the van that night and had a great time. And like, really just embracing when there was two two people at a show, and not
Mhm.
being upset by it. Like in Flint, Michigan, we were on tour with Go. We get there, and um, you're playing this amphitheater, and we're like, what the hell? We get there, they're like, oh no, you're just playing in the lobby, right? And we're like, okay, cool. And then they're like, nobody has money in Flint. So the kids are going to be standing outside the glass looking in because they can hear it. And that was like, we were like, oh shit, that's like awful. They don't have money to play. So we just turned our instruments and just played through the glass to
Oh.
everybody, because there was only like five kids who paid, like,
Hmm. Hmm.
and just like embracing that and loving it. And, so I'm blessed that we had this opportunity, as someone who never thought they would be playing music in their life, to have this and then bring music into my world for myself. Man, what a
Right.
gift.
Oh, awesome. Right. And like, even just naming again some of the band, I said it in the beginning, but the bands that you're describing, like from Lemonheads to Leeway, but I think Bad Trip makes sense that you guys play with bands with that differentiation there, because you guys talk about, obviously each album had a different sound. It fit with you guys,
Yeah.
doing that. Now, if you remember, think back, you're in Europe in 92, you went again in 95, you said
Yeah.
Now, your set list at the time, were you guys just really focusing on the new stuff with Rec Age, or you hitting some of the old stuff? Like, how'd you go about your set list at that point in time?
We tried to play to the audience, and one of the things we as a band we did was we tried to understand what the audience wanted. We were playing, I really believe this, we were playing for them.
Right.
So we tried to vary it up, and if bands knew our older stuff, they knew Fear and Loathing or whatever it was, we played that stuff. We always wanted to give the crowd something. And when Budsy came out, our last tour, it wasn't out by the time we came out. There was all these issues, but we certainly played a few songs, or maybe four songs off that record. But our goal was to just have fun with the audience and bring the audience into it. And that's kind of what I love about some of these bands who are getting back together is like part of me wants bands to write new music. And I know you and I were chatting about that briefly before of like the love of creating music. And I want to hear new music from Jawbreaker, from Gorilla Biscuits. Like I really want them to, I want Underdog to write a freaking,
Uh-huh.
I want Richie to write a new song. And at the same time, they're giving the audience what they want to.
Right.
And so like finding that balance was important for us.
So do you remember, I mean, it sounds like a lot of them, but say a couple of shows for Bad Trip that really stuck out for you. Like, man, that was cool. Like that
Yeah,
was a fun, experiment. I mean, you played with Offspring in Seattle. I mean, that's probably all
yeah,
mainstream, but you might have answered it already. But you think back at some really, really meaningful, great shows for
yeah.
you
I
on
mean,
Bad Trip.
it's hard to beat some of the CB shows with Gorilla Biscuits, Outburst, Super Touch, and then immediately later Burn, Die 116 even later. Like so those CB shows had such energy that you were there, and the sound system was so good and everybody was so psyched, um, that it's hard not to just be you know nostalgic about those shows. But then in Europe there was also, because I would say we were definitely bigger in Germany than we were in the US, there's no
Hmm.
doubt about it. So whereas we had a group of people who came out to see us and loved us, it was hard when we would be in like Leipzig. We played with Quicksand in Leipzig, and it was this giant show, and people were just going nuts. And like we after the show, that show was insane. I actually have a video of it. It's on YouTube, and we just hung out there the whole night with everybody. We just stayed in the club and just hung out with everybody and really connected. And so I think it was the shows like that where we made a connection with the audience
Hmm.
and everybody just had a freaking good time. Um, from a playing with Jawbreaker was awesome too.
Yeah.
Like it was just, and when we played this one show with them in Oxnard, California, it was like, I don't know, 30 people there. And I just remember being so grateful because I was such a fan of Unfun,
Hmm.
that so grateful to just be in the room, in the on the stage with them. And then, they were so cool because they were not a hardcore band, right? They just weren't. And they were being interviewed by Flipside, and they're like, "What's it like that you're on the bill with some hardcore bands?" They're like, "Well, if it's like Bad Trip, we're cool with that." And I just remember being like, "Oh my God, Blake just said that he's cool with that." And then
Yeah.
we ended up playing a bunch more shows with
That's
them, and
awesome.
so those kind of things when you play with a band. But I'll end with this. The show that sticks with me most actually is when we played with MDC at Gilman in San Francisco. Just because MDC was one of the first bands I really started to listen to, and their message was so important to my lyrical journey.
Hmm.
And to play with them at Gilman, no less, and have this opportunity to be part of history, um, probably was like the most pivotal show in a weird way.
Yeah. I say this a lot, and I've been asked this on when I've been on podcasts. It's like something if you look back and you look back at yourself when you're younger and it's something you would wish you would tell yourself as advice. One of the things I always tell myself is being in the moment a little bit more. It sounds
Yeah.
like you were with all of this, or a majority of it, though.
I think we tried to be, um I look back and I wish I was more in the moment, but in retrospect, we just had a ball. We had a good time. And, if I go back and think of every in our in all everything we do in our lives, um everything, as if I could make the most of that moment, I would. And I think having that kind of ability to look back has helped me more today, which is like, I really like Slowrole. I have nothing but appreciation for. I
Mm,
don't, I love, oh, we should have changed this. I have nothing but appreciation for every second of that. I have nothing but appreciation for the people who helped me, through that, to record it. So, I did, but when you're in it, like if I look back, like even some of the stuff when we were playing our final tour in 1995, we were fighting with each other. We were
mm,
like done, and how were we fighting after, playing a giant show with like sheer terror in Berlin? Like, what the hell was that? That was
mm,
sick,
mm.
so, but yeah, it's all,
Yeah, so that leads,
hindsight.
yeah, so that leads to my next part of it because I want to, next we're getting into slow roll. We're going to get into the EP and get into the songs here, and how that whole thing came about with slow roll. But 95, obviously bad trip ends. So you're saying there was some infighting and stuff. Was it known in 95 that you guys were done, or this was just building where you came back? You're like, I think we've done everything we can with this.
Yeah, I think there was a few things that happened. One was, there certain band members were more serious than others,
Mm.
right? So the
That's
drummer,
always the case at that point when you guys are starting to tour, right? At that point in
ex
time.
totally, like,
Hmm.
there, and myself, Marcos and Brendan were kind of bad trip guys. Like that was it. Like we weren't like looking, there were, it was also the time from, you know, 90 to 95. There was a lot of major label interest, right? We certainly had some as well. And so because of that, and you saw bands getting signed to big labels, the guys who wanted to be musicians wanted to take it really seriously, and we didn't care that much. I mean, a few of us just didn't. We wanted to stay a bad trip. It was sort of a side project, and so there was a little more infighting because there was a little more pressure. There was, people would come to see us, and like, so it ended up working out great. When we broke up, we all remained friends. There was no like,
That's great.
tension, and but for Marcos, who became this, huge director, Marcos Siega, like
Yeah.
directed all these videos, and now it's a, movie and TV director. Brendan, who's a lawyer, myself, who, got my PhD, and went back to school. We had different pathways. Eric, the drummer, and Artie wanted to go into music, and Artie Shepherd obviously
Yeah.
is one of my favorite songwriters ever. And Eric and Artie went and started Error Type 11. And so it ended up working out perfectly that the people that really wanted to move forward did. And then it was nothing but, kind of like we could reminisce and have a lot of joy about our time together.
Yeah. So the band ends. It's 95, give or take, or it is 95, not give or take. Um, is that when you decide to push forward with your career? And was there any interest in ever starting another band or having or even writing music to yourself with yourself sometimes,
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that life like for you after Bad Trip ended?
Yeah, it was really a transition for me to my career. Also, during the early 90s and 90 after 95 until 97, I struggled with heroin addiction.
Mhm.
And I'd have periods where I wasn't using. I'd, like, okay, I can do this. And then I would fall back into it. And so for me, there was really a period of growth during that time that I needed to work on myself. So music and sort of the pursuit of hobbies and interests, and just wasn't there because I was struggling too much. And at the same time, I was, an outreach worker for homeless kids. Even though I was still struggling, I was working at a Center for Public Health, HIV and Public Health. Like, I was always drawn to service. That's been kind of my
I actually wanted to
mission.
ask you, so being
Yeah.
in squats, did that stuff
Yeah.
connect with you when you were doing that? Or this was just always something that you always were? connected with service. I was just wondering, being in squats, seeing that stuff,
Yeah.
wanted looking to help people, you
Yeah.
know.
It was interesting, like in Europe, especially in Europe, it was a little different, where it was a little more part of culture. There was a little bit of a, community within squats, that people were doing it. They were like, yes, they were down and out, but there was always a social safety net in Europe, which was different than the US. The kids I was working with and the young people I work with, they were hustling. A lot of transgender kids at the piers and the West Side. So it's kind of a different vibe. They were just trying to stay alive. Where in Europe, it was part of a culture that they were in, squat culture, and even the East Village squat culture, because I lived in the East Village from 93 until 2006. And so even that culture there, um, was was a little different. So, but I did feel connected. Like, I'm one of these people who definitely, I'm okay sleeping in an abandoned building. Like when we would tour and stuff, and then I'd travel after on my own, and I'd just go and I'd find a place to hide with my sleeping bag. So yeah, I felt connected to it. I felt connected to it because I was like, I don't know. I, this is these are people living their lives in the moment, and I found it so refreshing
Yeah, it's true.
compared to what I was kind of brought up with. And at the same time, looking back in retrospect, I see like a lot of those people were suffering, like struggling,
Mm.
and I kind of didn't see it at the time. Um, but you know, I just didn't do much, and then I just immersed myself in work.
Mm.
I got into a PhD program, and I immersed myself in learning about addiction and mental health and
And that's a lot of work,
yeah.
PhD. My
Oh
wife
man.
has my wife has one, and it's I saw what she went through, and to do it, and a lot of people I know who go through it as well. There's always a moment where you feel like, can I get this done?
Can I get
And I
yeah,
and I don't have one, but I
yeah.
just from friends, from my wife, just seeing people who do it. I didn't know if was that ever the case while you were in the middle of it.
Oh, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Like without a doubt, like, should I really be doing this? Like, is this what I want? Should I try? I ended up taking a couple years off because we had a kid while I was in the program. We had no money because I was in this program. So, I had to go back. I ended up working for a couple years while I was in it, like deciding whether I would go back. But I just realized like my love is, you know, kind of this public health and psychology merger. And then I ended up starting a few companies and worked for nonprofits that was doing digital health, particularly digital health for addiction. And right now I have a digital health company that helps young people who are struggling with cannabis, THC, and using every day. It's an app and a program. And I find no greater love than the work I do, without a doubt. But at the same time, I was kind of missing the creativity. But from 1995 to 2015, I didn't do anything until I picked up a guitar. And I'm a terrible guitar player, but I just started playing on my own. And then I made sure that when I was playing, because I cared more about singing, I'd start singing with playing, right?
Okay.
And so I made sure that I'd be a three-chord wonder. But while I was doing that, I was able to do some vocal overlays. And so that's when it really started. My kids were a little older, they cared less about hanging out with me, you know what I mean? And that was that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounded like it gradually you got there, right? And then it really sounds like for slow roll now, because let's get into this, is it was like anything with COVID, you were home, right? So you you picked up, you were playing. Was there an intention for slow roll to start, or it just picked up more because you were home
Yeah,
and you were
the
writing
the
music?
latter. There was no intention,
Hmm.
and it was a very fluid process, which is, I would go down and just start playing a few chords and singing over it. Some of it had there was lyrics, and some of it was just making up words, with
Right.
vocal
Doing the
progression.
cadence and getting everything over it. Yeah.
Exactly, which I wish I did more for Bad Trip. I would actually write lyrics and try to put them on top of the song, and
Mm.
realize like, shouldn't do that. You should write the cadence, just the flow, and just sing nonsense, and then write the lyrics around it. I didn't do that for everything with Slowrole, but it was about going downstairs, and there would be, again, similar 3 months, I wouldn't do anything. Then I'd go down for a week and kind of be obsessed with it, or just play more like Nick Drakey like songs, and then I started to realize like, hey, there's a few songs here. So I started to record them, just me playing guitar and singing on voice recorder. Then I, you know, opened GarageBand and then laid a few layers of some vocal tracks, which certainly was present in Slowrole. And then over time, like, I wrote probably like 6 songs, and then I recorded about 4 of them. Um, when I say recorded, 2 of them had drums, and my son's a drummer, and then he had, some garage
That's
band
cool.
tracks over it,
Mhm.
and then recorded some of it. And I just said, and I sent it to a friend, and I were actually we were on Long Island, we were surfing, and we were chatting, and I told him I wrote some stuff, and he's like, "Oh, send it to me." So I sent it to him, and he was like, "You should record this." I was like, "I'm not recording this." He's like, "I have a studio." He's a sound engineer. He's like, "I have a studio in my basement in Brooklyn. Come and record this." I was like, "Absolutely not."
Yeah, like
Then a
this was
few
not
months,
your intention at all with this,
no,
right?
no way. And then a few months pass, and he's like, "Fred, record this. Just do it. Set a date right now. Set a date." I was like, "I don't have any musicians I'm playing with, and my son can play drums, but I don't have any." And he said, "Just do it." So we set a date, and then I go to the person who I'm going to go to for anything creative, which is our Artie Shepherd. And I said, "Hey, Artie, what do you think of this?" And I sent him, and he was like, "Cool." Yeah,
Yeah, I could see him being like all in with that stuff. Yep, yep.
it's like,
Mhm.
awesome. Yeah, let's do something,
Yeah.
man. Just send it
Uh-huh.
to me. I'll just riff. So it's like, all right. And so I asked Brendan from Bad Trip to play bass. He couldn't do it. He had some things going on. He had some health issues, unfortunately, but he's doing well now, which is awesome. And and then he was like, "Oh, Chris Enriquez." I was like, "Yeah, he's a great drummer, man. He's a sick drummer." He's like, "I can get Chris to come in." I was like, "Oh my God, that would be sick." And then essentially Ben, Artie's band, they just all came in and said, "Yeah, we'll do this." So I sent them the 4 songs, and I said, "Let's just have fun with this." And Slow Roll was born.
Slowrole was born, and now the EP came out. Was it February? Right?
Yeah, in February.
February, right.
Yeah.
So came out in February. We're in late May now. This was going to come out obviously early summer when it comes out. And I want to go over track by track with it. The one question I did want to ask you with, how did Bad Trip, when you look back, shape you as a songwriter
Yeah.
for this? Because they're two totally different bands.
Totally different bands. I think there was a few things. One, in terms of Bad Trip, was in the beginning, it was, Marcos would write a riff, and then, I'd write some lyrics and sing over it. And it was, I mean, I think it was a little disjointed. And then we would put a song together and get it all together, um, and build a song. Essentially, it was almost like it was in, these little segments and chunks. And then as we started going, we did start to just play more and jam more. Like there was a part of us, particularly for Buzzy, where we would just be in the, our drummer Eric's basement, or the studio, or his, practice studio, and just kind of going with it. And so as Bad Trip happened, one of the things I learned was, you know just go with it. Like, it was sort of, wrote, and then we turned the Buzzy record. We really just kind of went with it. And that's what I took for Slow Roll. The other thing, though, was, for me, one of the things that matters to me more, and I'm assuming this is with you too, based on your lyrics, Chris, and what I see is lyrics matter for me, and
So
it
important.
matters to me personally,
Yeah.
right? And I know it doesn't matter to a lot of bands.
Hmm.
And I think, growing up listening to the Dead Kennedys, Minor Threat, Reagan Youth, Fugazi, whatever it was, as part of that you know that had to be a part of what I was doing. And I had to write, Slowrole is kind of a little bit of a, rock opera, right? Like everything's connected in a way, right? And so that, and with Bad Trip, I spent a lot of time thinking about the lyrics and particularly drawn to social justice, you know, inequality, political, whatever that might be. So I think, that certainly influenced me a ton.
hmm And it all came out, and you had, let's say, like 20 so plus years of stuff that not realized that you wanted to talk about and write. So that's what I wanted to get into now. We want to talk track by track with this new
Yeah.
EP. Themes, ideas, lyrically, what you came up with. Um, when you wrote the song, did you come up like was the melody that you were humming over it and then you did the lyrics over it? Sounds like you did it a little differently than what you did with Bad Trip, like almost something you wanted to switch up a little bit. So let's talk the first track. We'll talk Fox's Prey. So how did that come
Yeah.
about when you were writing it? Was it just the music and then you started putting everything over it? How did it go? That with that one?
Yeah, that track was a little different than other tracks in that I wrote the song, the lyrics as I was playing it. So I start, and that song it's called Fox's Prey for a reason, which is about media silos and how misinformation is shifting and shaping the public consciousness, and how we are prey to the media because we've allowed them into our lives.
Yeah.
This is not about anything. uh it's not, even though it has, overtones, and we do, the lyrics are overtones of what's happening politically in this country now. It was really about me and how I was not doing anything about information being presented to me and being passive and just laying on my side, right? And I've become prey to this media silo as I'm
Mm,
scrolling through it, and how much I'm affected by it, and not realizing that I'm affected by it, whatever it might be, and how other people are affected by it too. And we're not taking action, that we're sitting here allowing certain things to be dismantled in our country. Um, and so I just started writing and I just started singing. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to record this on voice recorder. And so then I start, and
with
so
that theme in mind,
with
right?
that theme in
Yeah.
mind. So it was literally, I was mourning. I was mourning it as I was writing it. And so I put together maybe 4 or 5 different versions of it. And then I just wrote the lyrics I liked most and then put it in. And that was it. That was it. That's
That's
how I
simple.
wrote it.
And you
That's
said, I
simple.
think to an extent, you may have said this, like not overthinking,
Not
just
overthinking.
letting it happen, almost kind of thing, and not worrying about let it go, let it guide you wherever you're going creatively with it, right?
Let it go, let it be with the music, let it be integrated into the music in a way. And the other is usually what I would do, especially for Bad Trip, it was I'd write a song and then I'd, rewrite it
Yeah.
and, like, write other lyrics. Oh, is this better? Is, whatever it was. With this, I didn't do it. I would say maybe there was maybe there was 5 or 6 lines that I cut up in the whole record,
Wow.
which is just let it happen, let it go. And I, to be fair, it happened over such a long period of time, a couple years that I was doing it, and as I was writing it, that it made it easier. But what I had to do was actually go back to the recordings and then figure out what I was saying, and that's how I would end up getting the
Right.
lyrics.
And that's cool that while you were working on writing this song, that's what, the Fox's Prey, that's what you wanted to convey in your message to the song in terms of what you were writing about. I said this to you before we were on here, uh, that it has the whole EP, but it's an amazing like moody sound to it. It really does. And the recording captures it well. There's Jane's Addiction in there. And I was telling you too that I hear a little Sunny Day Real Estate, from
Yeah,
the first album, a little bit, as
I
well.
love
But
that record,
not
man.
that you're
It's
not,
such a
it's not
compliment,
like
man.
you're trying to do that. And just that's the kind of sound that it captures, which is obviously completely different from what you were doing with Bad Trip. Um, actually, do what so with this, what was a little different? Was it a product of COVID, just being home and writing, just doing stuff like you were doing, like the hardcore Bad Trip, like it was different. Bad Trip had different sounds on each album, but was this really intentional with what you were looking to do? More of like, let's call it a rock, a moody rock kind of feel when you were going into it?
Yeah, I don't think it was, and I think it was a result of my limitations,
Hmm.
right? It was a result of my limitations as a guitar player in many ways, and I am okay with limitations. I think art can happen, and good art, and whether this is good or bad is another story, but that like limitations help you create something different, right? Like, so being not a pretty bad guitar player allowed me to keep it simple and integrate the vocals with the guitar a little differently than someone who might be, an amazing guitar player and vocalist. So I think it was like kind of I allowed it to happen in a way that just kind of came through. There was very little intention with this, and as I was writing it, it was a dark time, right? Like it
Right.
was a dark time in the world, and so it's moody because I think there was a moody vibe going on, and I
Agreed.
think it's also moody because it was me in a dark basement, you know, like writing songs. And so much so, I mean, when we talk about it's not too much, half of that song was written in the studio. The part the if you listen, and I'm gonna actually put this out because someone asked me to put out those original four songs I sent to Chris, Eric, and Artie. Like, can you put that on, streaming? I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. That's cool, man. And you'll see, like, whoa. But like that song, it was written in the studio because I think everything I had was a little darker, man. Like it was dark shit. So,
And it was that was the time at that
and
point in time, right?
that was the
Right. You're not
time.
going to write a pop punk record,
Yeah,
during COVID in your
exactly,
basement,
exactly.
But I will tell you this with how you're describing how you go about writing. When you listen to it, you don't hear limitations to what you're writing. It's very thoughtful music that you're writing, with the lyrics, but also with the music that you're putting together, man. Um, so we're talking about it's not too much now, right?
Yeah.
So was that all in the studio, or you had some ideas and brought them into the studio and then enhanced it?
That song was because I had a verse and a chorus, and it was just a verse and a chorus. And I went in knowing that we needed to either create a bridge or something. And the my friend Paul, who helped produce it and really was the instigator here, um, was like, okay, this song needs something. Let's play around. And like he does, Artie was just like, all right, man, how's this? And Paul was like, who is this guy? You know, like, what the hell is this? So he created the intro and the bridge. And then I wrote lyrics around it, and we all did it in the studio. And that was actually one of the beautiful things about it is I sent those guys four songs. Pretty much only Artie did anything. He was thinking of some riffs, but we went in the studio and spent 2 days recording those four songs, and that was it. Like we listened to the song and say, hey, let's just play it, and they would just start riffing. Chris would just start riffing. Eric would just start playing stuff. I had a couple of bass lines, but other than that, we just start playing. And so we built, it's not too much in the studio, and we created a little more energy to it. Like, oh, there was a little more. And if you listen to the original version, it was way more bluesy. And Artie's like,
Hmm.
what about like a Fugazi vibe to the verse here? And he started playing something, and my initial reaction was like, that's way too Fugazi. And everybody's like, it's fine, it's okay to pay tribute to a
Mhm.
band in a verse. Like, go for it, like have fun. And hence it went. So and then we also realized, like, oh, like this is kind of like there's a it's a little bigger than the other songs. It's a little less moody. It's a little more classic
Mhm.
of a, intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus type song. And let's go with it. Let's have fun with it. Let's make it like a pop song. And we kind of did it. And that was the other thing about it is like it's okay that all these songs sounded different. There was
Yeah,
no
that's what's
like,
cool about it. It does
yeah,
have that, each one does a different sound to it.
Yeah, there was no need for continuity, right?
Right,
We were saying like these are individual songs. Let's appreciate the song for what it is and then go with it.
right, right. Now, what are the lyrics? What were you trying to tackle with the lyrics for this one?
Yeah, so that one is just being a it's built off Fox's Prey of just like being a lazy piece of shit. And it's like being like, okay, I'm going to do something. I see things happening politically. Um, this was the lyrics were not written in 2020. These lyrics were actually written later. The vocal progression was there, but the lyrics specifically were written in 2025, and it was about like, okay, there's some dismantling going on here and I'm not doing anything and I don't know what to do of our political system and our government. I don't know what to do, so I just need to do something, and I'm going. And it was trite, you know in the song I say, yes, another now, waiting room, start today. I call out songs, and I'm like, it's okay. And whether this is for me or anybody else, I don't really care. And I think that's part of it, is so much of this record was just for me. I needed to write it for me. And so what I tried to do is just say, okay, man, like, this song is about rising and taking some action, no matter what it is. And this past weekend was my mom's memorial, and I, she was someone who believed in service, right? And she believed in just action. And I think so many of us are paralyzed, not knowing what to do, or stuck in a scroll or whatever it is. And it was just my own attempt to motivate myself to do something, in the world, to make it a little bit better.
Ah, that's awesome, man. It really is. And you could tell, you could feel like the passion you have for these songs when you talk about it. Like it's just, like everything from the music on to obviously the lyrics, like we were talking about. Eat It All. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's talk about this
that
song.
one's a little darker. I mean, it's just about it's actually not about me. It's about how we consume information, but it is all part of the same thing, which is when we consume information without objectively looking at it or challenging the information, we're just eating shit. Doesn't matter who we're getting the information from. It doesn't matter which is we've lost the ability to be objective, with our information silos. And cognitive neuroscience tells us this. And I don't want to go down a cognitive neuroscience rabbit hole about salience and how we consume information and what that means in terms of our unconscious or actions. But you know if we are sitting there getting information, we're eating shit. We are just eating shit. And people are being promised, and this was more directly related to more or Newsmax, that kind of, it's like, if you're not challenging this information that's clearly a lie, where this is a problem. You're eating information, and what happens is our mindset in terms of what we do, we have to fit our beliefs so where there's no dissonant information. So you have to change what you think. And that's a big problem. Once you hear a lie and then you fit the lie into your world, that's a problem. That's a real problem. It doesn't matter though where it's coming from. If you shift your objectivity, then this is when we start to see the decline of a society, when we start having to shift our own beliefs to fit a lie. And
Yeah.
that's what the song's about.
Wow, great theme, great. And what were you looking at musically for this one?
I was
And did
with
the
it.
music, I'm sorry, make you feel that you have to write about this, or you had that idea already, and then you go like, okay, let me merge this with the music, or you needed the music to kind of bring you there?
Yeah, I think I needed the music to bring me there for this, which is like kind of this, at least the chorus, but there's really no chorus, right? It's just kind of a random, but I was saying eat it all, similar to Lay. It was kind of happened that way. And then the song progresses where it just kicks in, right? And it was my anger. My anger was kicking in at the moment. And that's what I was doing, of like thinking of this passivity and then just my anger coming in. And I was listening to a lot of Swans and Neurosis. Like you can kind of hear that vibe of the dissonant, heavy, sort of ethereal, um, and and then I also started layering vocals. And initially, at one point, I'd stripped out all of sort of like the nice Jane's Addiction-y part, and it was just yelling. It was just yelling. And then I realized, oh, that would be a nice background to have that yelling in the background to hear sort of like the anger that's coming out about what's happening where objective truth is being stolen, and like and that was my anger. So that's kind of where it ended up.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, last track, Finding Joy. And why was this, did you just decide this to make the last track?
It's interesting. Like it's actually the song people like most by far. When people talk about, not that there's tons of people listening, but so it was part of a theme. So I wanted to end with, we're all responsible for our own joy. I believe in, I'm an existential psychologist. I'm a stoic. I believe we all have to find our own joy no matter what, whether it's Man's Search for Meaning and Viktor Frankl, or just Stoicism, Sam Harris, whatever you might follow. I just truly am like, regardless of what's happening in the world, we have to create our own worlds, right? We have to find our own joy. We have to make meaning. And so, regardless of what's happening in the world, regardless of what's going on, it was actually a very difficult time from like 2024 until recently with a number of family deaths, and my wife's brother, sister-in-law. Like it was just like a lot of crazy shit. And we were out in San Francisco, and it was a combination of like what was happening in the world and then also what was happening in our lives. And I just started writing. So this was actually the one song that I didn't write. Well, more Rise too, but like I didn't write as I wrote this song separately and then sort of brought the music on into it. And it started as one chord. And I was just singing over it because I had some lyrics, and I just said, I have these lyrics, I'm gonna write something over it. And it was one chord, and then Artie, and Chris and Eric, you know, turned it into something beautiful. So
That's awesome, man. It's a great way to end it too. So I know this is always like a hard question, but what's your favorite song of these four that you really, sounds like you connect with all of them because all these lyrics are meaningful to you, but which one do you feel like connects with you the most?
I think there's two, um, and it's Fox's Prey and Eat It All. And I
Okay.
think I think for I think for Fox's Prey, I've never written a whole song while I was playing it.
Mm.
It just came out. Yeah. And so for me, I really feel it. Like I actually feel when I listen to the song, it's rare I always get sick of my music. I'm like done. I'm already actually moving on to some stuff. I'll talk about
Mhm.
that, but I actually listen to it and still get a little emotional when I hear it.
Mm.
And for me, that doesn't happen. Usually I need like 6 months and I'm like, oh, that was okay, like, but so for me, it's that song. And in speaking with people, the nice thing is because the songs are so different, people say like, oh, I like this song, or I like this. My wife, her favorite song is um, it's not too much, right? The Rise song, for by far. She's like, oh my God, that's the best one. What are you kidding me? Other people like, Finding Joy. And I think people who like Swans and Roses, heavier stuff, Eat It All is definitely
Yeah, well,
some of their favorite. Well, I
cool.
don't know. I'm not going to ask you. Do you have a song that you prefer on the record? You know,
Um, I there's always something to me, but I like the whole thing. I like Fox's Prey. I do because that it's I always like first tracks about. I like every track on an album, but there's something to me about an opening track on a record on an EP that even with streaming and all that stuff doesn't get lost with me. I just there's
mm,
something about the song that opens up a record or an EP. So it is. It's just always I always feel it's a band's way of making a statement like this is our new stuff.
Yes.
And this is what's representing our new stuff. So for this one particularly, I would say Fox's Prey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so great because I didn't kind of think about it enough. No, I knew that was my favorite, but
Hmm.
and realizing like, so people have sent me emails like, oh, you should have done it this way. Like, I think, you should have. And I was like, I wasn't thinking, you
Hmm.
know, like, I don't care, man. And then I realized I do, you know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Right,
like, oh
right.
shit, you're
Hmm.
right.
No, it's awesome. So now it's almost looking ahead with this. I know you just released this, but you've been working on this a while, even though it just came out a few months ago. But so what can we expect with Slow Roll,
Yeah,
And is it a slow roll out like what you're
yeah,
doing, or do you plan on playing some live shows? I mean, you have a nice all-star group behind you that Chris is the busiest guy in music, so Artie too with Ben and all that stuff. But
yeah,
do you and I'm assuming that's who you'd want to do it with,
yeah,
right? Right.
definitely,
So
without a doubt.
where do you see this project heading in the next year or so? And it
You
sounds like you're
know,
already working on new stuff.
yeah, it's a little different the stuff I'm working on, but I mean, I've written a couple songs. I got the bug, and I got the bug right after we were in the studio, but you know, I Chris was like, "Hey, we're playing a show with Ben, so I might like sneak on the bill there and just jump on."
And that makes
And
sense,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
it's just you going up and then yeah, that makes sense for you to do that.
yeah, and Artie and I have a long tradition because Mind Over Matter and Bad Trip toured Europe in '95. So Artie would play two sets right in a row. They would headline one show, we'd headline the next, and we go back and forth, and it was great. And Artie was just on stage for 2 hours. You know what I mean? And so they're playing a show, and Chris was like, "Hey, you want to just jump on before we get on, and we'll play a few songs." And so I'll do that, and then I think we're probably going to play. I'll probably play at least one show with it with those guys, and then they have to decide whether they want to do it. They're so busy, they're doing so much. They can just come on and play. That's how they're so talented that for them they don't have to worry about like, oh, we have to practice 5 times and do it. And I don't give a shit too. We just want to make sure that the audience is having fun. And but moving forward, the one thing this did was it allowed me and to say, okay, if I want to record something, I can. If I want to do this, this is not a heavy lift. We can just go into a studio, throw through, and just figure out what comes out, right? Like, who the hell cares? And I hope like people listening, like that is the one thing of like the ethos from when, and I brought it up right in the beginning because it's still so important to me of like when you're 15 and now, and there's again, not getting into cognitive neuroscience, but like as we get older, we're able to create more fluidity, right? We're able to do this and just sort of let it go and not care about the outcome, not be so rigid. So that's what I'm doing. And right now, I'm actually singing over the band Pelican. It's an instrumental battle metal band. So I've actually wrote 4 songs over their songs. Like lyrically, I go in my basement because I'm like, well,
It's
these
awesome.
guys are awesome.
Just the
So
creative, it's just flowing, right? I
just
mean,
flowing and doing it. And so one song I actually did some vocal overlays and tracks, and I'm going to send it to them. They're going to be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like don't ruin our songs. And I'm not, I'll ask their permission, but I've sent it to a few friends. They're like, "Oh, you should put this out." I'm like, I don't know if they're going to like that, man. But hey, I'm enjoying it. And it's allowing me to have that creative spirit for myself. And if other people want to listen to it, great. And if they don't, that's great too. I don't take
right.
myself too seriously, you know what I mean? And so, you know here we are.
I enjoy it. Now, are there any songs that you recorded for this that you didn't put on, or is just all four of those? That's what
All
you did.
four, we did all four. And there were some other songs that I just didn't even, I said don't even worry about this, so I have a couple of other songs.
That
But
you're putting the work in now with, I guess, right? Like
yeah,
yeah. Mhm.
exactly. But no, we went with it all. And there was some talk. I was chatting with people about editing. Like, I don't know if this song is there yet. Maybe we should put it. I'm like, let's just do this. Like,
Mhm.
I know there's not a lot of people listening to this, you know, like that's okay. Like, I think, you know, with Bad Trip, we always, you know, we're like, oh, we want record sales and we wanted to make sure that there was an audience. Um, and with this, it's very personal, but it's also at the same time, you know, I'm 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 excited to play, and if people like it and want to come out and see me, that's awesome. You know, I have a lot of friends who have never seen Bad Trip that are really psyched for me to go out and play. And then other people I don't know who are Bad Trip fans who are like, cool, can you play a
Yeah.
bunch of Bad Trip songs when you go out and play? You know,
Mhm.
like, which, you know, we did a 2010 reunion, which was awesome with Go at ABC No Rio. That was a ball. We had a great time. People came out. It was amazing. You know, maybe we'll do it again sometime, but in the interim, this is it.
Now you're having fun with it. That's what I was gonna. That was actually my last question to you before we wrap up here. Was would that? I know you did that in 2010. Is has doing this, even though you're so focused in on slow roll, would that ever lead to Bad Trip reunion? Because not ever like reunions are all over. I mean, everybody like it's
Yeah.
happening now. So I didn't know if like just playing now with this would lead you to potentially doing something like that again.
Yeah, I think we will, but you know, we'll see when. We were saying we're not going to do it again until 2030. So like 20 year, you know, because it was the
Okay, that
1990
makes
tour
sense.
we did
Yeah,
with Go,
it's
2010.
gonna be
Maybe
here
we'll just
before you know it.
yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah. So, you know, but who knows? It gets into like whatever, you know, if we decide to do it again, we'll do it again. I know some people have talked about the Rec Age sort of reunion show with a bunch of bands, all the Rec Age
That'd be
bands,
awesome.
and neglect, you know, people that have done stuff, which in Mind Over Matter did some stuff, you know, like just whatever happens, happens, which is the fun thing. I'm just psyched to be a part of it. And what I'm psyched is it sort of brought me back into the hardcore scene in a
Yeah.
different way. And I kind of miss not going to shows as much. And I've gone to a ton of shows. And that's not true. I mean, I guess I've been going to shows, but like when Straight Ahead played just recently, I went both days, and it was just I stage dove during Spirit of Youth.
Oh,
Like I
that's
just like
great.
went out and I got kicked in the face. You know what I mean? I was just all in during Gorilla
Yeah.
Biscuits, Hold Your Ground. Just all, you know, like just super psyched and super psyched. You know, one of the things I realized also was one of the cool things about Bad Trip is we did span a fairly long period of time. You know, we were kind of in the you know with the New Breed comp and sort of more of the New York hardcore scene, and then some of the Long Island and Wreck Age stuff that was it was such a wonderful experience over time. And like I love the idea of us doing something at some point with the different bands that we played with over time,
Yeah.
and playing again. So yeah,
That'd be
nothing but
cool.
joy.
One day,
Find it,
love to see
find
it.
it, find and joy. And hell, we'll play with you guys, man. As I
That'd be
said,
fun. That'd be fun.
I really, you know, again, you guys came a little after my time. Um, I have been having a ball, Chris, really listening to you guys overthrow.
Thank you.
I
Appreciate that.
really like your early stuff, as I mentioned, like that kind of a veil, silent majority in the best way possible.
Mhm.
And then and your newer stuff, you know, is a little like more, I guess, intense, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I love it. And what I love is your lyrics. And as we said, like
Thank you.
lyrics matter. And
It's important.
yeah, yeah. And that you have this political social justice, you know, action oriented, you know, component to your lyrics, and it's so tied to the energy of the music. I'm super excited to listen, and this is actually one of the beauty of being like playing again is like I'm just finding all these bands and I'm
Yeah.
just having a ball, man. It's
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank
No,
you,
sure.
thank you
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
yeah,
Especially coming from, think about everything you just were talking about with the four songs that you had, like that you guys that you just released. Very, very just, yeah, very thoughtful lyrics and stuff like that. Just, yeah, so excited for more to come, even though you just released
yeah,
this. And the reason why I could say that is because these songs you've been writing for a little while. So I know you
yeah,
have some
yeah, for
stuff that's
sure.
coming.
There's more. There's
But
more.
Fred, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to end with here before I sign us off here?
Now, just a lot of gratitude. Wait, I guess yes. So I said no and, but yes and
Mm.
a lot of gratitude to all the people that have been doing this a long time. I definitely was all in, and I still go see shows, but it was not a lot of hardcore. Like one of the things I've really appreciated over the last year was all the people who've remained true to hardcore punk and alternative, who've been doing this a long time and kept the flame going, you know, and people like you are doing podcasts and starting and writing new music. Like it's needed, and it's like I would not be where I am if people weren't carrying the torch and holding the flame and still doing this, because there's a whole new generation of hardcore kids out there because of
Yeah.
all y'all. And it's been such a blessing. I almost feel like I'm stealing a little bit from all the work everyone else is doing, but just tons of gratitude. So thank you.
No, but that work you did is what kind of led us to
Yeah,
where we are. It all builds, right?
it
So
all builds. Yeah.
no, but definitely like to end off with definitely, if people haven't, check out your EP, Slowrole. So it's great. It's really good.
Thanks, man.
Awesome job, man. All right, hang tight. I'll sign us off and
Cheers.
we'll chat up when we're done.
All right.
Th-
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the What Lies Ahead podcast, which is available on all streaming platforms. Go save the What Lies Ahead podcast playlist on Spotify that features all bands that were on the show. For more information on future episodes, you can go to my Instagram account and follow at What Lies Ahead _podcast and on Facebook by searching What Lies Ahead. See you on the next episode.